Meeting to order. So before we get started, we're going to call a special council meeting, and I will call that meeting to order, and I will turn this over to Daryl.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So we have one item to deal with on the special council meeting. This is a to do with our Disaster Mitigation Adaptation Fund, otherwise known in the community as a bit of a discussion around flooding and flood mitigation. So the town of Drumheller is applying to the federal government and provincial government for funding for comprehensive flood mitigation adaptation program. And what we're looking for here tonight is basically a level of commitment from council that we are serious about doing this. This goes to show a lot of confidence with the federal and provincial governments if we are actually showing that we're ready to commit to this as well, but not only as a community, but in terms of financial responsibility. So the total project's about 5 to 6 years long. And so what we're looking at is our commitment is $5 million, of which we'd be looking at over that term, that period. We already have, council has approved through a borrowing bylaw earlier this year, approximately $800,000, just $1 million, sorry, $1 million. So this is an additional $4 million to our contribution, not an additional $5 million. So the total contribution from the town of Drumheller would be $5 million, of which $1 million's already previously been approved by council. So you'll see on the attached colorful handout in legal, if everyone has it, or sorry, ledger. One of the things that municipalities are bound by are a debt ceiling. So we cannot, the province has legislated a debt limit of 1.5 times estimated revenue. So in our case, $30 million debt ceiling. Council of previous terms has passed a bylaw or a policy, that says we will not exceed 60% of the provincial mandated bylaw or provincial mandated requirement. So if you look on the first page, our total provincial debt ceiling is $30 million for the town of Drumheller. 60% of that is $18 million is our self-imposed debt limit. And as of the end of 2018, our debt is $9.1 million, $9.2 million. So we're roughly 51% of our allowable debt limit. And then you'll see we've cash flowed this borrowing to coincide with the project over the next 5 years. And you'll see that we don't get above 54% of our, almost 55% of our debt ceiling, self-imposed debt ceiling for this project. So there is still available debt remaining if projects seem to come up that require it. But for this project alone, we are not in danger of going anywhere near our debt ceiling. So,
can I have a motion? Tom?
I move that council approve $5 million as the town's share of funding under the federal government's disaster mitigation application fund to build a climate adaptable dike system along 40 kilometers stretch of the town of Drumheller in the Red Deer River Basin.
Seconder, Tony, comments? No one? Oh, Jay?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's important to recognize two things. One, the information that's been provided by administration is precisely the data we needed to make this decision. And so I appreciate the work that went into putting together this cash flow graph for us. It's also reassuring to see that despite the number of large infrastructure projects we've had in the time that I've served, that we're still at this particular moment below that 50% mark. And also important that it go on record for the public that this borrowing is entirely dependent on that funding coming through. That's and correct. Would be cash flowed appropriately in the years where the projects were actually moving forward, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Tom?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment, you know, this seems like an awful lot of money, and it is for a small community. But the reality is that the town of Drumheller and people have to realize, is a flood community. And literally thousands of people in this community every spring are sitting there on pins and needles waiting to see how high the water will go this year. And it absolutely brings everything to a standstill. It just has absolutely hamstrung this community for 100 years. And this project, if it goes through the way it anticipated, will go an awful long way to basically get people of Drumheller out of this situation where we have to look at spring in trepidation every single year.
Tony?
Just a question, Daryl, for those of us that weren't around years ago when the other policy was passed. Could you just give us some history and rationale on that bylaw to restrict the debt?
I wish I could, Tony, but I
You
don't
weren't
know.
here that
I
long
don't know
either?
the reason behind the 60%.
I think Linda's the only one in the room who was who would have been serving at the time that that particular policy was put into place. I can't. I'm sure it would have more to do with basically putting soft handcuffs around any current council that, despite what the province would allow for borrowing, that a more reasonable in terms of debt servicing ratio, because of course debt servicing is the other part of this, be kept within reason for what this community could afford as far as interest payments go. Yeah. So that's my understanding of the rationale, is just to make sure that there was an additional layer of cost containment and reasonableness applied, because even $30 million does seem a bit high for a community of this size, despite the fact that that's the provincial calculation.
I think an analogy would be the idea of going for a mortgage to a lending institution and being surprised that you could, at the limit that they're providing to you, when in fact you sort of do that gut check yourself to go, I don't think I really could afford this kind of mortgage. And I think this is much the same way, that if you had, ever burgeoning population growth and, you're a large center like Airdrie or that, maybe you would get closer to that debts, to the mandated from the province. But I think for our case, it was a bit more of prudence, fiscal prudence in the day.
Jay?
One more comment, Your Worship, if no one else has anything. Just again, for the record, it often comes up when we're talking about incurring debt. Why don't we just pay for these things from reserves? So again, I think it's important that it go on the record that even though the town of Drumheller has been in the process of building up reserves, we're certainly far from our target in that regard. But more importantly, some of those reserves are completely dedicated towards specific business items in the town of Drumheller. And even more than that, what borrowing does for projects where the lifespan of the infrastructure is potentially 20 to 40 years is it allows the taxpayers of the future to help shoulder some of the burden of the cost of that infrastructure that continues to protect them, instead of having all the burden of that borrowing or all the burden of the cost of that infrastructure being borne by just the current taxpayers. So instead, it's spread out throughout the lifespan of the infrastructure.
Anybody else? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, could I have a motion to close the meeting? Adjourn the meeting? Fred? Jay? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so that's that meeting. Now we will move on to the committee of whole meeting of today, November 19th, and I will call this meeting to order. Just have a few comments I'd like to make. First of all, I'd like to congratulate BMO on their 100th anniversary here in Drumheller. I stopped by today, and they had a lot of their big chiefs there, so it was really neat to see them come and see the valley. And BMO is really excited to start getting very intertwined in the community and get involved, so that's great news. And I'd really like to send, and this is going to take a minute, but I think it's well-deserved, is a huge round of applause and thank you to the Festival of Lights Committee. That was one spectacular evening the other night. So I heard at the peak, there was over 2,000 people out there. So I know that in Pioneer Trail, you couldn't move very much. So anyways, I would just like to give mention to these people because I think they more than deserve it. So Carol Toder, she was the chair. Marley Henney from Chamber of Commerce, and she was the vice chair. April Harrison from Drumheller Valley FCSS treasurer. Grant Daly from Kinsman Club, looked after sounds and light. Laura Gadukin from Community Services coordinator. Lorenda Southern from Town of Drumheller, sorry. Doug Stanford from Rotary, Myrna Goyne from a volunteer, Corinne Gerling volunteer, Jolene Powell, RJ Flowers, Teresa Vivi from Ramada, Riddell Weave from Drum FM, Will Belleville from Drum FM, Bill Wolf and his team for those amazing fireworks. All the businesses that stayed open and were there, lights on, and helped make the area feel that much more welcome. And finally, our Public Works team for just an incredible, incredible job. I mean, I used to just look at all the decorations and I know that event set them back a bit for some of their other duties, but I think as a community, we're all very grateful. So Daryl, can you make sure you send a great thanks to all of them? So we shall move on, unless anybody else has any news to spread. Okay. So now we're on to our delegations. So first of all, we have the Homework Help Program, Louise Hendrickson. We will let you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor Colebrook and councillors. Thanks for your time this evening and members. So I've been the coordinator for family literacy for 10 years, and I just kind of wanted to give you a bigger picture of what we've been doing on behalf of the application we've sent out from Drumheller Community Learning Society, who I work underneath, and why we have those logos up there. The Drumheller Community Learning Society and Adult Literacy and myself and Campus Alberta all offer in-kind supports. There's no fees for that. So through family literacy, I noticed that working in homes with families that there was a need that came to my attention, and parents asking, what about my older child? Because I was going for younger children. They said, what about my older child? So through this partnership, we've created a program that is filling a gap in our community. We started in 2013 with Synovus, who over the years had donated over $45,000, so really helped us keep us going. This past year, Torkson has donated $10,000, so it's just trying to keep this ball rolling and have the support for these families. So just some quick facts. We started with 10 students, and right now we consistently get 80+ students in the year. So we have 18 elementary, 23 junior high, 38 high school students. Rural high school completion rate is approximately 74%. So there's Alberta average is about 76%, so a little bit of a difference there. But when you look at First Nations or our English as a second language learners, it is respectively 50% and then 67%. So the numbers are down there. So it's important for these students to get the help the first time around and not go back for a GED or not go back at all. It's a huge impact for them. When you have a student come in tears telling you she just doesn't get math, she doesn't understand it, and then a year later comes in tears of joy, it's the first time ever in junior high, got an 80% in math, you know that you're doing something and making a difference. I could share a lot more stories and information on that, but then we'd be here all night. So just wanted to share what some of the students are saying. I won't read them off to you if you just want to have a quick brief. This was junior high and senior high and a grade 8 student. And one of the young gentlemen in grade 7 asked, when I asked him if it was helping him, his response was something I can't repeat in public, but typical of a junior high response. But yes, it's making a huge difference and is really appreciative of that. These are some of the things of what parents are saying to us and their struggles of, they may not have had a good experience in school. They may not be familiar, if you're ESL or English as a second language, you're not aware of all the curriculum and the information. So it's how can we support them to have their child succeed the first time around. It's interesting too, they're also adding, it's 74% to graduate in 3 years, they're adding it to a 5-year term. So some of the kids do take the 5 years to get through high school. So how will we become sustainable? We're in the process of forming the Drumheller Community Learning Foundation. There's a committee that we're working on doing that. We have parents who can afford it make donations. We are encouraging and continue to request support from current community partners, and we'll keep seeking out new partnerships within our community. So that's where we would like to be in 3 to 5 years, be a sustainable program through our own funding. Right now, besides Torkson, Boston Pizza has donated for the last 3 years, not a huge sum, but it sure makes a difference. Chinook Financial has committed to 3 years of $2,500 for 3 years through fundraising and donations. Western Financial, the Korean community, have done donations for us. The Drumheller Library Society has agreed for $2,500 for this year. I'm still working with Canadian Natural Resources, hoping for something a little bit more from them, but we'll see. And of course, the individual families. So that's kind of where we're at with it. If there's any further comments, questions?
Questions? Tony?
Thanks for that, Louise. Very good program. Hats off to you for heading that up as well. Just a quick question on the operating budget. What's your anticipated operations for the year?
With the funds we get, with the support from Synovus, we were operating at $35,000 a year, and that 85% of that went strictly to the coaches, tutors that we have hired. So between Campus Alberta, the Drumheller Community Learning Society, because we have that space on our recognized site, and sometimes it's just kind of sitting there a little bit vacant, so the space is offered in free. We do sometimes use the library or upstairs in BCF where there's a quiet spot for tutoring, so it just kind of depends where we can get free space. And a couple of our facilitators actually do go in homes, because an ideal goal would be giving information to the parents and letting them go forward with it, but a lot of our families are just not at that space for a lot of different reasons.
Tom?
So the foundation that you're planning, that's going to be like a nonprofit society?
Correct. We couldn't call it Friends of Drumheller Community Learning Society because there's already a Friends of DVSS or Drumheller Secondary. So they sounded too similar, so we had to create something different. That's why we went with a foundation. But yes, we would be looking at not only just for homework help, but for extra additional costs of running the learning center that we do operate through right now.
Yeah, but it will be a registered nonprofit society that
Yes.
you'll do your fundraising. So are you
Yep.
anticipating doing any like AGLC fundraising, like raffles or gaming or
Yes, we have the paperwork.
casinos or?
Sorry. Yes, we have the paperwork in. We're just waiting for a response on that.
Yeah.
So that would be a long-term goal, or because I know you can't get into casinos right away, but having a casino would help with costs.
Yeah. And I'm just curious about the building that you're in. Do you pay rent on that, or how does that work?
It is split between Drumheller Community Learning Society, so their society, but also the funding we get from Alberta Advanced Education. So and each of us between the adult literacy, myself and family literacy, and the adult education portion that Dana does, we all have our own funds. So out of that, from Alberta Advanced Education, we each put in a portion to pay for the rent, and plus Campus Alberta.
Okay.
Anybody else? Jay?
I thought I'd wait to go last because I'm the ringer. Having been recently appointed to the board of Drumheller Community Learning, of course it's I think incumbent on me to advocate for this program. You know, my family has personally benefited from the homework help program and continues to this day. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Louise, when you talked about meeting a need in the community. Clearly, the additional help that's required, I'm not sure what that high school completion rate would look like if it weren't for this. And so, you know, what I'm very pleased about is that the society itself is looking for its different programs to have a path towards sustainability. It's frustrating in this day and age that unfortunately would involve gaming, but at the same time, there's really no other mechanism since the Alberta Lotteries Foundation stopped giving out grants that way. So now chasing the filthy lucre is the only way that people can find a way forward. That being said, you know that I'm a fan, so temper this with that. When you look at the funding requests that we get for standalone organizations, what we have to focus on is, of course, our own finite resources and jurisdictions. So when you consider roads and street lights and water and wastewater and solid waste management and policing and fire protection and family and community support services and, of course, all the money we spend on recreation, what you won't find in a municipal government's jurisdiction is education. You will find post-secondary education, but unfortunately homework help doesn't fit in that. So it would be a departure, a rather large one. The last time I can remember something connected to just secondary education was declined by this council a couple of years ago for different playground requests, that sort of thing. I know this is a very, very different program, but just know that we have a bad history of providing what we think is transitional funding, only to find the organization that we've been funding to become hooked on that funding and look for it in perpetuity. I would only be interested in moving forward supporting this with taxpayer money if we had a clear path towards sustainability where you would be eventually weaned off of these funds. And so, again, multi-year agreements are a difficult thing for any council to do because we don't have a crystal ball about what the future is going to hold, and certainly this council is bracing for what we think will be austerity budgets in the coming years from what we expect will be a new government at the provincial level anyway. And so just know that we will seriously consider this request for funding when we go through all of our new asks for funding through our budget process, but know that it would also be a departure as this level of education. We like to look after all the things we're responsible for as well as we can before we step outside those jurisdictions.
Thank you. That's a very fair comment. I completely understand where you're coming from. So, but just making the awareness of, you know, this is a need that people have been asking for, and we wouldn't be quite so busy if things were working really well for them for whatever reasons within the school systems. So
still going to advocate, still going to twist arms. Don't worry. just needed to lay down the rationale and foundation for how some of these decisions get made.
Yeah. So I guess my only other thing is thank you very, very much, and thank you to the parents who came out tonight, because it is important to them too that this was something that they really appreciate. So thanks.
Any other questions, councillors? I'm just curious, how come there's so many, the new word around is silos? It seems like you talk about adult education, Alberta Advanced Education, homework club, schools. Why doesn't everybody just kind of collaborate together? And I'm just asking. Any comments?
Well, the Drumheller Community Learning Society is a collaboration of many of those arms together. They are pooling their resources to try to lower their overhead costs and a number of things. Why isn't Alberta Education funding this is a great question for your MLA. Right? But I think the Drumheller Learning Society and all of its programs, including homework help, is a great example of that kind of collaboration.
Perfect. Well, I would love to get some kind of information so I can put a letter together and see what we could do.
That would be awesome. There is a big divide between Alberta Advanced Education, because technically they tell us, actually, I don't have a choice. I am not allowed to work with children through that funding. They have to be 18 or older. So that is cut and dry. And the education system doesn't really want people stepping on their toes and doing these things, but children are falling through the cracks, and then we end up with them as an adult. And it's way cheaper to catch them now than to wait till they get to the adult and say, oh, by the way, I need my grade 12, or I need this. So supporting them now. But you're right, speaking with the MLA and trying to work together on a bigger provincial level would make a big difference.
Okay, yeah, if you can get us some information, because we're working hard, this council, to work with ministers for all different things, so we might as well go with that one as well. And yes, thank you to, we've got a great gallery of parents and kids. We don't usually get very many visitors, so we really appreciate you guys coming out. And just before I forget, I wanted to, I promised April I would say this, that if there's any volunteers out there, they're looking for more people to make the next Festival of Lights. Just, I don't know how they're going to raise the bar, but they have plans. So if anybody knows anybody willing to volunteer, please contact April here at Town Hall. And I just forgot to thank the whole community for coming out and sponsoring that, and all the people who bought the fire pits and the donors. And I mean, I could go on and on for everybody, but I just didn't want to forget that. So thank you, Louise. Is there any other things? Okay, I will wait on your letter. And I guess, Benita, it's now your turn. So you can speak on behalf of ParentLink.
Well, good evening to everyone, Madam Mayor and the councillors. My name's Benita Hudson. I am part of Golden Prairie ParentLink Center since October 2005. So that's been a while, and I must apologize. This is a long overdue report to you, because technically you are a partner to us all. And I'll explain that during the history here. So in 2004, the first ParentLink centers and networks were established through grants by the province of Alberta. At the time, the province was reacting to large-scale economic forces that resulted in parents with young children becoming isolated from their extended families and community. The pressures of work migration and shift schedules, along with other factors, sifted down to the most vulnerable in our society, which is the children. The most obvious result was that more and more children were coming to school less and less prepared. Both federal and provincial governments at that time undertook extensive series of studies that provided persuasive evidence that the importance of those first 5 years of life. I don't know if any of you have heard of ACEs, or Adverse Childhood Experiences. Those, if they happen during the first 5 years of life, the first 2,000 days, they actually have been proven to influence both the future health and success of children. So as a result, the province tried to get together education, social services, and health to establish ParentLink centers. At present, it's only under social services with some input from Alberta Health and Education. But there again, in other provinces, they actually work better in this particular area, looking at under 5, because they work almost seamlessly together. Alberta tends to make their own way, and we have still silos. There are now 57 ParentLink centers across the province, providing parents and caregivers with a network of free programs, resources, and support. And I'll emphasize that word free, because mostly the biggest barrier that they were seeing is that people won't come. Even if they had the income to come to things, they would rather spend it on something else. So we are mandated to provide our programs as free as we possibly can and reduce barriers, as many of them as possible. So in February 2005, our ParentLink Center was formed under a community-led program, and it was decided by our Child and Family Services that it would cover Drumheller, Hanna, and Three Hills area. So at that point in time, the FCSS people that were at the table worked out a partnership. They knew that what rural meant was that people couldn't get to programming. They looked at Drumheller, and there are people on the edges. There's no bus service, no taxi service that's affordable. How do people get to programming? You have to reduce barriers somehow. So we provided services to all these little towns and areas. At this point, it's 10 little communities, including Drumheller, Hannah, Three Hills, Morin, Munson, Delia, Acme, Carbon, Linden, Trochu. And so we, it doesn't matter if there's only 2 to 3 families that will regularly come. We try to do that because those families normally wouldn't even travel to the next largest center. So when they divided up the responsibility for the grant, what the agreement became was that Nehill Regional FCSS would take over the administration of the grant, and that the town of Drumheller and Hannah would provide free space and resources to help make it possible to do that rural spread. And through the years, we've worked very hard to work with any other municipality to get reduced rates for space in their particular areas, and I'm so grateful for the help that that's been to our budget, because space is probably one of the more expensive things that we have next to actually providing staff. So we have to provide, as a Parent Link Center, 5 pillars of support. The first one is early childhood development programs. So that is purposely planned programs that work with parents and children, where the parents are playing with the children, but the activities are there to work on different areas of development. Parent education is our second one. We address common parenting issues through the programming. The province has mandated that we use PPP, positive parenting, which is an evidence-based program, but we also use other ones because not one parenting program fits all. We want to make sure that the parents have something they feel comfortable coming to. We also do family support programs, which is a very vague term, but really what it means is that wherever possible, we try to individualize supports based on the parents in the community. So often you will see, if you've gone to the Play and Roll in the Badlands Community Facility, you'll see Yvonne talking to those parents. She'll make little notes, and if they have parenting issues, she comes back next week, and when she talks to them, she actually offers them a tip sheet or asks them whether they've been able to work with that particular challenge. That's part of our family support. We also provide where they can register a time with some of our coaches or our parent educator, and they can actually do one-on-one with that or suggest a group that would be good for them. We also do developmental screening, and this is one thing that I feel so very strongly about, because the screen that the province mandates us to use, after doing a lot of research on it, it is actually one of the best there is for even identifying things like autism at 2 to 4 months. Now, if you've been around enough children, you can already start to see the signs, but this screen actually asks the parent questions which will help them understand that there's something wrong with their social emotional communication with that child, and will actually help them go through that process of asking for help. The sooner you identify a problem, the more quickly it can be solved. And as a teacher who's worked in schools for many years, the worst thing to do is walk into a class and see a child who labels themselves as stupid, and they're not stupid by any means except that they don't understand the skill. They haven't been taught. So many teachers will get frustrated because a child doesn't know how to wait in line. Well, that's a skill that can be taught before school. Then the child doesn't see that frustration on the teacher's face and think it's labeled at them personally. It's just the frustration of a parent. I mean, as a teacher sitting there, why can't those kids just wait in line? You know, and so if you work back through all these skills, and that's what these screens will help do, we can give specific aids to those children. We believe in this so strongly that we offer parents, if they complete a regular screen that covers generally 5 different developmental areas, and the social emotional screen, we offer them a $10 gift card. And so We have actually seen an uptake in screens that way, and my thought was, what better thing that in this kind of economic time is than having a $10 grocery card in your hand, right? One time we went to the Early Years Fair, and this one lady came and she heard about that, and she says, I have no money this month for groceries. And she did screens, 6 screens, because she had 3 kids, to get the $30 right there on the spot. So that kind of felt good, and one of the children we were able to actually help so that they didn't have to go into special stuff later on. And the last one, and this is to deal with my dear friend here, Lorraine, and other agencies work with, we do information referral. We try to build partnerships, relationships, so we know that whatever other services are being offered, we know about them. That's the link part of Parent Link Center. We know about them, and we will refer, because we can't do everything. We're just the first stop we are hoping to be for these parents. So on your table in front of you, you have a one-pager. I gave this so you could keep a reference. It gives a number of statistics that we gathered in our last year. If you look at how many programming hours, we did 1,163.5 in 10 communities, using 4.8 full-time equivalent staff. There are actually 6 of us that work part-time, so that's how that breaks out. That enabled us to cover 34 different kinds of programs covering early childhood, all those areas that I just said, and we had 1,219 unique participants. And how we count that is the first time somebody comes, starting from April to March, that's one, that you're a unique person. Doesn't matter how many other times you come to a program, that's counted as attendance. That's not unique. So when you see that, that's 1,219 unique participants. And as far as, it's more difficult to read because it's in light color, we did 103 ASQ3s, and 32 of those referred to other agencies for help we couldn't give them ourselves, and 83 ASQ SE2s, and 14 of those referred to other agencies. We partnered with the community to do 70 special attempts with 1,878 participants, and we did in all, not just through the ASQs, 205 referrals to other agencies. If you look on the other side, this is the numbers that pertain to you. So there again, in your particular areas, which we count as Drumheller, Munson, and Morin, there were actually 197 that registered right in Drumheller, and 21 adults in Munson and Morin programming. For the 0 to 5 is 186, and 28 of those were in Munson, or 28 separate ones in Munson and Morin. And then we have this odd thing, we do programming for 0 to 6, so as soon as they turn 6, though, we have to count them in a separate category. That is the federal government's thing. They go 0 to 5 and then 6 to 12. But majority, if you see 6 plus, that means usually they're just turned 6 during the year. And then we have a number of different events. Last year, we had a couple of people move on to more, because they moved out of the community, so we didn't have staff for a while, so we did a number of special events to try to bring in more people. And that's where you see these registered family events like Mad Science, Junior Engineers, Gymboree, all of them focusing on a different area of development. I'm trying to be fast here. We're almost done. Partners are essential for our work. So we work with family fun events, so parents can access quality family programming one Saturday a month on a weekend. It's important. We work closely with the Drumheller and Area Early Childhood Coalition, and this allows us to keep up with current developments, to pool our resources with other agencies in the community, to develop tools to enhance assets, as well as address challenges to healthy development that parents are facing. The EDI, which is the Early Development Instrument, results for kindergartners in our area, helps informs what activities and programs we plan. So one of the areas was social competence and emotional maturity. So we received for a couple years additional granting so that we brought in more professional development, not just for the parent link, but for all our other supporting agencies like Healthy Families, like the teachers' aides, anybody who dealt with 0 to 5, we made sure that they could be part of that. So through that, we did emotion coaching, social emotional one-on-one, and just recently Handle with Care. And then as far as us personally, when any of my staff take those, I say you need to develop those principles and put them into your programming. Even if the parents don't know they're there, you are adding them in. You're choosing stories that help bring that to them. I mean, we were just talking about the idea of trying to bring in breathing, which I'm trying to do now, so I'll slow down. But it's just one of those things that is really important. So I'm almost to the last here, and the specific partnerships that concern you. Last winter, our Drumheller family coach worked with the VCF and arranged an accessible time for parents and their preschoolers to work on specific physical development skills once a week for 6 weeks. That was in one of the field houses. Her husband, Martin McSpeen, was with her. They worked together with the families. The families were really happy, and that was a wonderful partnership because it was right at the time that those parents could get there. And we do other partnerships, but that's the really, to me, is a star one. The other one is the fact that once a week we do get the use of the BCF to do that play and roll program. That is our largest program in our parent link. And some days it's almost overwhelmingly large. Like, I don't know if anybody saw the pictures of the Halloween people standing on the steps. That wasn't all the people there. That's the people who agreed to have their picture taken. I heard there were at least 75 or 80 people, including the children there. And yet, Yvonne is so good to get to each one, and I have been them personally. The one group that's really difficult to get out is teenage or very young moms. And when the program's large like that, they love to come because they're anonymous. They come on the edges. They don't have to go all the way in if they're a little afraid. And then they may leave before it goes to the library where the other programming is. But they've got a taste, right? They have the ability to go to that table where she has stuff set out and pick it up and get a calendar, and maybe now they have a phone number that they can phone her if they have a question and stuff. So I think that is probably one of the best programs we actually have in the whole parent. Like, don't tell my boss though. She would rather us do really small programs, but I want a program that gathers everybody in, and then they've got the information to come. So I'd just like to highlight and thank all of you for your partnership, for letting me ramble on like this. Your partnership like this allows us to use more of our funding for working directly with families. So you are welcome to come check out what we do. Our schedule is online. Under our website, under locations, you can find Drumheller, or you can go to beside the library, there's that bulletin board, and our calendar is always sitting there. So at this point, I'd like to open up for questions. So.
Thank you very much, Benita. Tom?
Yeah, thank you very much for the information. Absolutely invaluable, what you guys do. And you know, most of us who have been parents realize the challenges of raising children. And I've told people many, many times, I've had many jobs in my life, and absolutely the most difficult, absolutely the most challenging was being a good parent and raising good children. I mean, that is the most difficult job to do it right, to do it properly, to do it well. A couple things that I just noted here. You know, I was raised a long time ago, and we had very traditional families. And going through being a teacher for many years, you know, you look at the significant changes in what we used to refer to as the family. Families are really interesting these days. And that can be a huge challenge to, again, getting kids to be successful. Because we assume that there's a parent at home. You can't assume that anymore. We assume that there's two parents. Can't assume that anymore. There's just so many assumptions that, you know, we just take for granted that kids are going to kind of grow up well, and, oh, well, holy mackerel, that just doesn't work that way. I mean, kids need good role models and good experiences from day one practically. And you look at the statistics and the, you know, the studies that have been done on children before the age of 4. I mean, if they don't have positive experiences and role models, and I mean, they can be literally in trouble for the rest of their life. And people don't realize that the necessity of these kind of programs. Just one other thing I was going to mention and get your opinion on, the free-range children. How do you, you know, this was an interesting concept that I came across. In fact, I saw an article on it the other day. I saw a TV show on it. But we had an experience. One of my daughter's friends is raising a free-range child. And the free-range child came to our house. Well, let me tell you, it's interesting. So I'd like your comment on that.
So I would like you to define free-range child for me. I have an idea, but I'd really like whatever this program actually defined it for you.
I don't know if there's a definition, but it's more along the lines of the child gets to experience kind of what they want to experience and kind of do what they want to do. And the article I saw on television was the mother basically sent her 7-year-old with her 3-year-old to the store by themselves. And the police didn't like that. So anyways, I'm not exactly sure what
I was going to say, I think that happened to me, but it was only a block away, but when I was little. So, but I don't know if there's much free range. What I've seen is a definite shift in our programming. So with the advent of more and more people with smartphones and the ability to stay connected constantly, parents are not paying attention to their children. So it's not necessarily that they intentionally let their children do anything they want. It's almost like it's doing it by, oh, I just didn't notice they were doing that, right? When a child doesn't get eye contact with their parents, they start to develop interesting ways of getting attention from other people. And some of the free-range behavior like that is more like, somebody please notice me. What we do in our programming is try to always hurt our parents back. So we haven't outright banned phones because some parents themselves are very anxious if they don't have that phone right where they can touch it. But we do say that they have to pay attention, and if they want their children to sit, the biggest thing is they have to sit with their children and do the activities with them. And that is the advantage, I think, from my boss's perspective of those tinier programs, is because you have that one-to-one connection with every single parent in your program, whereas if you have 20 parents, a little more difficult to manage that, although I watched Yvonne do it better than I even did things like that when I was teaching. She just has a very good sense of humor when she does it. So, I don't know if, the biggest thing is what we're trying to do is get parents to really realize the most important connection they have is with their children. And unfortunately, that is through mentoring and through actual example, right? And it's really difficult. I would say, put out a plea to grandparents too, is that you are a significant influence on those children when you sit with that child and spend time. I know my husband's mother made all the difference for the world for my kids, and I'm going to brag a little bit because I have a son who just finished his doctoral thesis last week. But I know it was because of Art's mother, who actually spent all the time reading when I was too busy with 4 little kids to do that. She would come over and sit and read and do puzzles with those kids. And there was no way as a young parent that I had that, until she was gone, had I realized how much work she had really invested into them. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on that part. Any other questions?
Jay?
Thank you, Your Worship. Not a question, just a comment. I think the program, you're right, long overdue, but very, very welcome. You didn't ramble. It was a great presentation. The information is incredibly important. It shows, again, the partnerships and collaborations that happen with FCSS. It's amazing how these early childhood interventions have been developed in a way that they're integrated in so many different ways with play to be the most non-threatening as possible, because of course seeking any kind of parenting advice is fraught with landmines and shame, unfortunately. And so all I wanted to say was thank you for all the work, and please pass that along to your peer partners.
Anybody else? Are you guys still displaced, or have you found a home?
So where we are right now is we are in our office. Long time ago used to be in this building, and this area seems so familiar to me because this was our play area. It's much improved, but you know. We pay for office space in the Elam building, and we also get a reduced rate on their nursery, and we're pay every time we have to use their other space for parent education there. So that is a significant cost. It's not above and beyond the regular rates around here. And the only difficulty that they're trying to remedy that, I don't know if you've been in the building recently, but there used to be a dip down and up into the gym. So you went down the stairs and then you had to go up in the gym. They've actually leveled that off, so the wing out towards the nursery is all on a level, and now there's a ramp down to where their other meeting rooms are. So that helps in some ways. I do know that our parents find that place, some of them, very spooky. And if you were like a person like my husband was, where school was a bad place, he was dyslexic and he had nothing but bad times in school. So very difficult for him when we first got our kids into school to even get them to go there for phys ed like games or anything like that. So it's a little bit of a barrier, but that's why we really appreciate even having that 1 day a week at the BCF, because parents, like I say, flock there. So that's really lovely.
Just for you all, the reason I asked is when I first ran into Bonita, and we talked quite a bit, and they, as well as many others, were part of this building, and when the town took it over, they kind of lost their way. So I'm glad to hear you've got something in the works. It would be awesome, and I know it's not in the budget, so I'm not going to ask, but to see all under one roof, because then the kids can, so you never know, maybe we got some great person out there that's willing to donate a building that would love to help.
And I will say that if you're in any place that has a Parent Link Center, go. So a lot of municipalities, they spent, rather than going to the rural areas, they have just a center and hope all the parents come to them. It is worth going to see what they have built doing that. So just that a lot of times they have counseling or anything else that they've amalgamated into the same building, so that if you're doing referral on an ASQ, you can just send them down the hall to somebody who actually can help them with that, rather than all of us paying for different spaces. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in Calgary and had the tour of the mental health center there, and they have all those different wings for different departments, and I thought that is someday what would be great to see here, because then, you know, parents are getting everything they need, kids are getting everything they need, so something to keep in the back of your minds. And hey, and if there's any generous donor out there that has a building that they would like to donate, call me, I will connect them. So anything else? Thank you guys very much for your time. It was very much appreciated, very informative. Okay, let's move on to 5.5.1, and Greg, you're up.
Thank you, Mrs. Kohlberg. If it pleases council, I draw your attention, I've put two maps at each place, numbered 1 and 2. We've considered, after discussion with the CAO, two other areas of become possibilities. Number one is an aerial shot of Newcastle Beach, but specifically what I've just put in a rough quadrilateral there is the cook shack or the picnic shack there. Just for some scale, the outlined area is just under 4 acres, according to Shane Cassidy, our GIS staff member. The cook shack could be taken down. Positive things about it are it's got trees, it's got shade, there's ample parking, it's easily accessible. A lot of people walk through there as well as drive. The areas would use some manicuring and perhaps some improvement for a parking area. Downside is that it is near the river, and all that brings. Number 2 is, and I should have drawn it in better, I apologize. It's Elgin Hill, up in this corner here. The top of the map is the 575. This is Elgin Hill. Highway 9 yard is right over there. This area here, I didn't realize until just a short while ago, used to be actually a community. People lived up on the hill. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I didn't realize that. One of the bylaw officers, he's lived up there as a child. Perhaps that happened to him before he was 4. But at any rate, there is a road here that we could do some improvements to. It would offer a large parking area here. In spite of all the lines, and this is all owned, all from here over, except for the residents there on the service road. This is all town property. Now, there is residences, as you can see, of course, the Elgin Hill and over here, but it is elevated, and if we were to potentially have a fenced area on the high ground, it's somewhat deceiving because a lot of this isn't high ground, and I know you know the area. Everyone knows the Elgin Hill area. But a fenced-in area on the high ground, this gray, rather brown spot here could be somewhat groomed for a parking area. People could access it on foot, of course, by coming up this there's a narrow roadway here, but that we could offer some improvements to that. And it could be fenced off more towards the highway, which could minimize some of the noise. Somebody may find dogs barking, et cetera, that could make its way. It does offer, when you are up here, it is a bit of a different world, and it's not so much. It's high. The noise if we said we positioned it here, dogs barking, any carry on would be more directed this way. There wouldn't be anything, say, south of this potential line here. Would offer an area of perhaps 2 to 3 acres, depending on how it was fenced in and designed. So keeping that in mind, after discussing with the CAO, we were considering, as part of an online survey, the assistance of Julia, and see what public opinion would be, if you think that's perhaps worthwhile next step.
Thanks, Greg. Comments? Tony?
Is there anything up top of the Elgin Hill there, like as far as trees go, or is it just more or less open prairie, shrubbery?
Yeah,
and
there's some low grass. It's It's very dry. There's some low bushes and the odd scraggly tree, but there's nothing really of any substantial shade, no.
And then my other question with respect to the first map there, that old cookhouse you talk about, how old is it? Is it not used? Is there plumbing there?
It's
Is
just,
there?
it's either the case where it should either be completely spruced up, improved, or taken out, sorry, Darryl. And it's more of a party location, and it's fallen into somewhat of a disrepair, in my opinion.
So there's no water there, or water line, or nothing?
No.
No, there's several of them around the community, Tony, and they, basically the middle of it has a little cooking stove barbecue in kind of a bricked area, and then the rest of it there, it's just, you would be able to put chairs inside there, and Greg is correct. This one in particular has a lot of graffiti on it, and it has fallen into disrepair over the years. People who are out here for ball tournaments and stuff tend to set little fires out in this corner with for bonfires and stuff. So,
Jay?
Thank you, Your Worship. I know I'm certainly leaning towards either of the locations that were selected in Newcastle Beach, and I like the idea of getting rid of a structure that has outlived its lifespan and not serving its purpose anymore, because we've been looking to make reinvestments into that area for a while now, and getting rid of a derelict building would certainly be one of them. And at the same time, I'm reluctant to support even putting the Elgin Hill possibility out before the public. There's a finite number of flat land available for development in this community, and even though for a fairly long period of time there's been no takers when it comes to developing this subdivision that is on the books, this is a subdivision that is on the books. You'll see those lot sizes already drawn in on some of the in the overhead map, and so since we do have a finite amount of developable land that's not in the flood fringe, I would be reluctant to use that space for a dog park when had we been receiving even 5 to 10% growth, the hope would have been that there would have already have been several multifamily dwellings and a new apartment building in that area. And that's the next logical place for those particular developments to go. So I'd like to see this subdivision held for that purpose instead of being put forward as a possible location for this park.
Tom?
Yeah, I kind of like the Newcastle one as well, the Elgin Hill. To me, you're going to have to go up the hill, first of all, to get to it. I think the fencing would be difficult, no shade, et cetera, et cetera. I think the Newcastle Park area is very good. I believe, I'm not 100% sure that there actually is water there. Like on the end of that shack, I think there's a pump. And I don't know if it's still on or off, or sure seem to remember water being there sometime. Maybe it's off now or whatever.
yeah, I don't think it's there anymore.
No.
So, no.
Anyways, my only question would be the path that runs through there. That is a pretty good shortcut for a lot of the people in Newcastle. When they're going downtown, they'll go back through there and then up. So if that was all fenced off as a dog park, then that path wouldn't be very accessible. So that would be my only
But
worry.
I think at that, Tom, this is an example of what it could look like. 'Cause I too use that path and think you'd want to do something at least to reconfigure it in that area. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be lost, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Anybody else? I did have one question. What was that?
Just a couple.
Oh, the water
Oh,
thing. You go ahead with the water thing.
No.
Okay, so it's the water thing. I talked to people who have been to different dog parks, and the bowls or whatever there are there. They just bring their own water and they pour them in for their dogs. So I think we don't want to get caught up in, Elgin Hill is a great place, but I think expense-wise, we have to redo that road going up and different things like that, where this is, if we're talking about cost of the community, I think it's far more effective, and I love the fact that we clean up an old, so that's just my input. Go ahead, Daryl.
One of the other things, and we had talked about this with the other dog park potential in Newcastle, here are the homes that are, you can see at the bottom of the page, are actually quite a bit higher and quite a bit protected from this area in here. There's quite a bit of trees. So compared to the other location, you would probably hear a lot less, these residents would hear a lot less noise than the residents on Newcastle Road would hear. So in my mind, that's just another reason why this is a good spot for it. So.
Anybody else? So do you have everything you need?
If Elgin Hill doesn't want to be considered, I can I can go forth with this area and come up with a tentative plan and space used, leave Mr. Zrisky's path in place, and, we can just go forth with this location. It would expedite things, and we can get on it.
I think considering how little time we spend debating some items, this has taken a long time. I think, like, my sense is that if this isn't a good spot in 3 or 4 years, we can move it. It's just a bunch of fence posts. I don't think we need to worry about, I think it's good to get back to the community to say, here's where we think is the best spot and here's the reasons why. Do you support it or not? But I think looking at other places and going through the process, all it'll do is just delay it even longer in my mind, so.
Agreed. I think this is the best location proposed so far. And again, the consultation part at this point needs to be just that, Daryl, going back to the community saying, this is council's recommendation based on a series of discussions and why it was chosen and its advantages. Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at the dog park situation as, I don't think having one dog park will be sufficient for everyone. All we can do is start with one, and hopefully this will be good for a number of people and a number of dogs. And I like to think over the next, 5 to 10 years, we might have a half a dozen different dog parks that might cater to different types of dogs and sizes of dogs and that kind of thing. But I think we have to start with one, and this could be very good for a number of people and a number of dogs, and then we'll go from there.
No, I know I meant to drag it out. I just wanted to, the first one put forward to some thought and to be rationally considered, so the next one would be, the community would look upon it favorably, not like, oh no, now the Peters' dog parks. I wanted it not to belabor it. I hope you understand.
Yeah,
I just wanted
and I don't. Yeah, I'm not suggesting that at all, Greg. Actually, all I'm thinking of is, and I'm agreeing with Tom, is that, the idea is put one out there, see what the how much use it gets. If we find out that it's overrun with dogs and the demand is so high that we'll look to build another one, and then and then on from there. If we find, in fact, that nobody uses it, then at least we have an answer about what we want to do in the future. So.
Okay, Greg. Oh, go ahead.
No, just quickly. I was just speaking to Julia quickly. So we'll put this forward, this only, with consideration. This was council's recommending, and did you consider this, or do you recommend, or do you support this?
No.
How would you like it? Tell me.
I would just say that we are going to put it up on the website and say that this is the new
Okay.
site, new dogs, and then we can give them a deadline of when it's going to open, etc.
Very good. Okay, so round table. Let's start with you, Christine.
I don't think I have anything specifically other than Festival of Lights was amazing.
I gave an update on the Drumheller Community Learning Society last council roundtable, and I have no committee reports since.
Tony?
I don't have anything per se. Oh, Tony.
Sorry. Nothing specifically, other than I don't want to get the update on the rink lost, so we'll come back to that later.
Tom?
Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate the Drumheller Citizens on Patrol Association and the town of Drumheller for creating an office space for COP. It's been a long time coming. They were one of these groups that were in this building at one time and kind of got displaced and slipped through the cracks a little bit. So Drumheller Citizens on Patrol thanks the town and everybody involved with helping out and getting them the office space. And I think the Citizens on Patrol is obviously a tremendously worthwhile organization in this day and age where we have a break-in every minute practically, and they're out there patrolling, helping make the community safer. I also was I also spoke at the wellness fair. Rose Polson and the town had a seniors wellness fair, which was quite interesting, and I mentioned to the seniors some wellness tips because I'm so well. Not that I'm a senior, but there were a few things like that. I'd also like to mention that I want to congratulate the mayor on the incredible job that she is doing that people don't realize in lobbying and advocating for this community. It absolutely astounds me, and for us who have been on council for a while, as Councillor Garbett kind of mentioned it last, more advocacy, more lobbying, more meetings with ministers and MLAs and MPs and government people in my many years of being on council. So, and this goes with you know, a tremendous amount of effort and time and energy on behalf of the mayor. So I'd just like to thank the mayor. I'd also like to mention I attended, Councillor DeMott and I attended the DVSS Remembrance Day ceremony. Remembrance Day ceremonies were really, really good again. So lots of great things going on.
Thank you, Tom. Fred?
Well, I have nothing, but I did what Tom said. I attended the Remembrance Day in East Cooley, and it's always cool to see the community out, and Ray Hummel running the ceremony. It was very respectful, and I'm happy they invited us.
Very good. And I just, I wanted to say thank you, Tom, for attending the Wayne communities, and anybody else that they need at those meetings, they can let us know. And Daryl, can you just give me a brief update on, there was a barricade issue this weekend, and it's kind of flew around. So I'd like to just get some closure on this.
Sure. So the Festival of Lights, the committee wanted the street closed off. Last year it was closed off around 2 p.m. And this year the barricades were dropped off earlier than that. And sorry, I'll back up. So last year the whole area was closed around 2 p.m. The area right at Center and 3rd was closed off around noon to allow everyone to set up. And this year the barricades were dropped off earlier, and the committee members had agreed and had actually wanted the barricades earlier, but we're going to open and close the barricades to allow people to come and go. And until reading it on Saturday afternoon, that in fact hadn't happened. There was so something happened with the communication with the committee. So I guess the one challenge with volunteers is that they're volunteering stuff, and they were the ones that wanted to actually do this and had not followed through. So I have to talk to a couple of people in the committee to find out what happened there.
Okay, well, it's just, you know, just so that everybody out there knows we do our best to communicate these things, and unfortunately, we really don't intend to upset anybody. So yeah, apologies to those who were frustrated.
Yeah, the goal certainly wasn't to close the road off early. So although it was interesting, I don't know if anyone noticed on the evening that there was one vehicle that was literally kind of abandoned on 3rd Avenue, about 5 or 6 feet from a fire pit. So hopefully they didn't have any damage. But this vehicle, I guess everyone had complied with getting their vehicles off the road by 4 o'clock, except for one vehicle. But again, the goal of the barricades wasn't to close it off the traffic. It was just to allow it to try to get ready. So.
Okay. Administration, anything?
No, and Tony had a question about the roof at the arena. So,
Oh.
and yeah, so I think that a couple of parts to this. So the roof is what I'm told from Reg is that it's supposed to be completed by Thursday. They didn't realize, they had no idea why it leaked, or I guess when he checked this morning, why it leaked on the weekend. They should have no leaks after it's all completed. I know we're not very happy with this contractor. The contractor came highly regarded to the town for this work, and they've taken extraordinary long time to. It's all, and they actually are working every second weekend here as well. So the amount of time that they're spending here to do the work that they're doing is just unbelievable. And so I've had Reg, who's the contract administrator, to talk to them to say that we want to. Their insurance company has paid for the damage in the past, but we want to make sure that their insurance and their bonding companies know that they're not actually performing the work in a timely manner like we expect. I mean, this thing should have been done 5 weeks ago, probably. You know. So.
And I know a media release went out on the pool, but do you want to just give a quick update on that as well?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Tony.
Yeah, I realize they've been there an exorbitant amount of time. I can't really imagine how you'd make any money on this. But again, there's on the pieces that are supposedly complete is where we have the leaks. And it wasn't one, we're up to 3 leaks here now. And I seen the guys over there this afternoon and shoveling water off of the roof there, but you know, it's frustrating, I think, for our workers as well that are employed over there and the damage that it causes internally. And it's just like you're spinning your wheels, and not to say all of the users that are going through there looking at a brand new roof that actually leaks.
Yeah,
right?
oh no,
So,
I agree.
yeah.
And certainly our staff are frustrated with it because again, they should have been finished a long time ago. I think part of the problem is that the one of the last pieces that needs to get done up there is the flashing, which is usually a sort of a horizontal vertical piece in there, and that's supposed to be done as part of this week. So even if all of the tarring and stuff is done, if that flashing is not there, you will still get water through those crevices, you know, at the inside joint. So, but having said that, again, they should have been there. I believe they started the work in the middle of September, and it was a 4-week project, not a 3-month project. So, yeah, very disappointing from our perspective. We would not recommend them to anybody, and based on this work they've done for us. So, and the pool update. So we have the general contractor who is still under warranty for this work is bringing in a company to do mud jacking. Basically, is putting a slurry concrete seal under the pool to fill the void that was washed away when the water leaked out of the pool. And they're doing that on Friday, and then after that's completed, they'll be doing a fiberglass patch on the drain, letting it harden for a couple of days, and then be able to put water in it early next week. So, and then from that, it's about a 10-day process, according to Andrea, to fill, heat, and test the water, which the longest portion is testing, getting the tests in from Alberta Health Services. So we're hoping for early December to get it all done, so, and open back to the public.
Thank you, Daryl. Anybody else? Administration, anybody? Comments, questions? Okay, could I get a motion to go into camera, please? Tony, Christine,